Okay, today we're going to do a little practice work over what we've covered in Chapter 8. So this is practice test number 1. And problem A says write the equation of the circle. So remember that circles look like an x parentheses squared plus a y parentheses squared equal to a number. That's what circles look like. So we know our center is negative 4, 2. So plus 4 minus 2. This gives us a center of negative 4, 2. And the radius is 6. So that's a 36, which is 6 squared. Now, B is a little bit tougher than that, although our end result will be the same. We're going to have an x parentheses, a y parentheses, and those are squared and then equal to a number. The difference is they don't tell us anything. In A, we knew the center and the radius, so it was a no-brainer. Here, we're going to have to figure all that out. So we have a circle, and we know that it has a diameter whose endpoints are 2, negative 6, and 4, positive 6. Those are the endpoints of the diameter. So if we are to find the center, we know that it will be the midpoint or the average of these two. So to find the midpoint, remember we're going to average. So 2 plus 4 over 2 and negative 6 plus 6 over 2. That's how we find midpoint. We did that way back at the beginning of the year. You've done that every year since you were in middle school, actually. Midpoint is average, so we're going to add and divide by 2. So it looks like my center is 2 plus 4, 6 over 2, 3, comma, 0. So x minus 3, y minus 0, or plus 0, or not at all. You could just write y squared there, plain y squared. Now, the radius is going to be the distance from here to here. That will be the radius. And to find distance, remember, we do the square root of x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. I'm finding the distance between this point and this point right here. That's going to be my radius. So that distance is 4 minus 3, that's 1 squared is 1, plus 36. So my radius is the square root of 37. Well, remember, when you write the equation of the circle, this is r squared. So if the radius is the square root of 37, then this is 37. So in order to do this problem, we had to remember how to do midpoint, which is average. And we had to remember the distance formula, which is x minus x squared, y minus y squared. Add them up and take the square root. So that takes care of A and B. All right, let's look at C and D. Now C is an ellipse. So the equation of an ellipse is a little bit different. So we have an x squared parentheses over a number plus a y squared parentheses over a number equal to 1. Now, I'm going to kind of sketch what I know. I have a center at 4, negative 1. Well, that's good to know because I can come right up and put that in right now. If my center is 4, -1, then I know I have x minus 4 and y plus 1. That part's easy. Now, what do I know? It's stretched vertically, so I'm just going to freehand it in here. It's stretched vertically. The major axis has a length of 16. Now, if the major axis has a length of 16, that means that you would be counting up and down 8. The whole thing is 16. So we're going up and down 8. Now, we're not graphing this. You don't need to plot points and all that, although you can if you want. If we're going up and down 8, then this number has to be, oh, excuse me, wrong one. This number has to be a 64. Because, remember, this is like the radius number under y. We're going up and down 8 to get a total of 16. And the minor axis is 4, which means we're counting back and forth 2. If the whole thing is 4, we're going back and forth 2. And if we're going back and forth 2, then this number is a 4, because the square root of that number tells me how far sideways to go. And I know I'm going 2, so that has to be a 4. And there it is. That's problem C. Okay. Let's look at problem D, which is another ellipse, so I can set it up just like I did the last one. This is what an ellipse looks like. And this time, I know I have a endpoint at 1, 10, and 1, -4. And that is the major axis. So right there is my major axis. That's the long one. And then I have -2, 3, and 4, 3. And that is my minor axis. So my ellipse looks like this. Okay? Now, can I get a center out of that? Well, I think you can quite easily. It's right here. The center is where the major and the minor axis intersect. So that would be the point where x is 1 and y is 3. So x minus 1, y minus 3. Now, for the numbers underneath, remember, those are like the radius numbers. So we need to know how far we're moving. So sideways, I'm going from 1 to 4. From 1 to 4. That's 3. So this number must be a 9, because the square root of 9 is 3, and that tells me how far sideways to go. Now I'm going from 3 to 10, which is 7. So this must be a 49, because the square root of 49 is 7, and that's how far up and down I'm going. And that one's done. Okay, we're going to skip to G because we didn't get far enough to do E and F, so we're going to skip to G. And now we're going to write the equation of a parabola. So wait a second, parabolas, there's only one squared letter, and there's another not squared letter. Remember, this is what parabolas look like, and then there's some number out here in front. Very important number out there in front. So let's see what we know. We have a vertex at 4, 5. And we have a focus at 4, 7. Okay. Now, from that alone, the fact that this is your vertex and this is your focus, you should be able to tell which way that parabola opens. That parabola opens up. Because remember, they always wrap around their focus. So the focus is always inside the curve. Now, that tells us a lot about the equation. First of all, it tells us that x is squared. Remember that chart that's in your notes? You'll want to have that handy. If you have a parabola opening up or down, it's x that's squared. So this will be x minus 4, y minus 5. That's my vertex at 4, 5. Now this distance right here from the vertex to the focus is p. And in this particular equation, p is 2, which means this coefficient must be 8, because this coefficient is always 4p. And since the parabola is opening up, that 8 is positive. There it is. That is G. Now, H. Again, it's a parabola, so it's going to have an equation that looks like this, only one squared thing. This time, we know the focus is 2, -6. And the directrix, actually, I'm going to redraw this up a little higher because everything's happening down below there. So 2, -6. And that's the focus now. That is not the vertex. That is the focus. And the directrix is y equals -2. Now, that information alone should tell you which way the parabola opens. Remember, it opens around its focus and away from its directrix. So the focus, or excuse me, the vertex is going to be right in here, and this parabola is going to look like this. It's going to wrap around its focus and open away from the directrix. Now, what is that point? Well, remember, it's right in line with the focus. So its x-coordinate must be 2. Now, what about its y-coordinate? Well, remember that if you start at your vertex, the distance you go to your focus is exactly the same as the distance that you go to your directrix. So in other words, that vertex is right in the middle of the focus and the directrix. Because if we go down, let's say we go down 7 for our focus, we're going to go up 7 for our directrix. This is right in the middle. So we're at -2 and -6. Right in the middle would be -4, the midpoint. -2 plus -6 is -8 divided by 2 is -4. So I have a parabola opening down, which means, by the way, that x is squared. Think of your chart. It also means this number is going to be negative. And now I know that my vertex is 2, -4. Be very careful when you write that equation that you put in your vertex and not your focus. Your vertex is what goes into the equation. Now I know this number right here is going to be 4p. And in this equation, once again, it looks like p equals 2. So this number is an 8. And there we go. Okay, so now we're ready for problem number 2. Problem number 2 says we have a circle and we are going to find its center and its radius. All right, so you recall that means we're going to do some completing the square. So I'm going to go ahead and put my x's together and leave a blank. Put my y's together and leave a blank. Move the 6 over and put my 2 blanks over there, because whatever I'm going to add to the left side, I'm going to have to add to the right side. So I move that 6 over to the other side so it becomes positive. Now I'm going to complete the square. Half of 8 is 4, squared is 16. And half of 4 is 2, squared is 4. So now this can be written as a perfect square, x plus 4. If you factor this thing right here, this trinomial, if you factor it, you get x plus 4, x plus 4. The process I just did is called completing the square. We're making squares. This one is y minus 2. Notice this is a plus because of that right there. This is a minus because of that right there. And that equals, that's squared, so that, what is that, 26? So your job is to find the center. So the center is at negative 4, 2. And the radius is the square root of 26. It's backwards of the very first problem that we did here. We're finding the center and the radius. So we put our equation into standard form, and then it's easy. Negative 4, 2, square root of 26. All right, now we have a parabola. I'm going to turn it around because this is the way I've been writing them, and I don't want you to be confused. So I'm just going to turn it around using the good old symmetric property of equality. Just turn it around, write it this way. Doesn't matter one iota. Excuse me. All right, so let's see what we can figure out here. I see my vertex is at negative 6, 1. It's my vertex, negative 6, 1. Remember, always x before y. That's my vertex. So the directions say find the vertex. Done. Negative 6, 1 goes to that blank. Well, which way is it open? Before I start figuring out all the rest of this stuff, I want to make sure I have it opening in the right direction. So which way does it open? Well, it's a y squared, positive. So if you're looking at your chart, that means it opens to the right. That means that my focus is in here and my directrix is back here. Now, I am freehanding those in, so that is not where they're going to end up. But for the time being, I just want you to get a feeling for it. That's where they are. Now, that means that whatever your focus is, it's going to have a y coordinate of 1. And whatever your directrix is, it's going to be x equals because it's crossing the x-axis. So it's in a vertical line, x equals. Now, in order to figure out exactly where they are, I have to come back to this number right here. And remember that in the equation, that number is 4p. When it is in the equation, that number is 4p. So 4p is 24, which means P is actually 6. So I was way off with this point. I have to count forward 6. So that actually puts me at 0, 1. My focus is at 0, 1. Because this distance, I have to count forward 6 units to get that point. And then to get this, I have to go back 6 units, which obviously that would put me onto my sofa cushion over here. So I'm just going to label it. If I back up 6, this is going to be x equals negative 12. So my directrix is x equals negative 12, because I start at negative 6 and back up 6. My focus is at 0, 1, because I'm going to start at negative 6 and go forward 6. That puts me at 0, 1. So I have my vertex, I have my focus, I have my directrix. My focal width is this number right here. So you do not need to do any work, excuse me, to find that focal width. It's always right there in the equation. The focal width is the number right there. Okay. Now we're ready for number, let's see, that was 3, we're ready for 4. All right, so 4 says we have an ellipse. Okay. And we're going to find all this stuff. All right. Well, the center is a no-brainer. The center is right there in your equation. The center is at 3, negative 1. So there is your center. So in the blank marked C, you're going to put 3, negative 1. 3, negative 1. Now remember that this number right here, the square root of that number tells you how far sideways to go. So we're going to start at our center, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 this way. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 this way. So we're going straight sideways 6. That would put me over here at negative 3, negative 1. And it would put me here at 9, negative 1. And you know what I'm going to say. If you're having trouble with that, use graph paper. Count the boxes. And then this number, the square root of it, tells me how far up and down to go. So the square root of 1 is 1. So I'm going to go up 1 and down 1, which will put me at 3, 0 and 3, negative 2. And when I connect those dots, I get my ellipse. Those 4 purple points, this is a 3. Those 4 purple points are the vertices. So where it says vertices on your paper, you're going to fill that in. Those 4. You're going to write down all 4 of them. Now, this axis right here is the major axis. So the major axis is 12 units long. How do I know? Because I counted left and right 6 units. So that gives me a total length of 12. And then my minor axis is 2 because I counted up and down 1 for a total distance of 2, up 1 and down 1. I know that my foci are always located on the major axis. So already I know, because I got to fill in the blank there on my paper, already I know that whatever they are, their y coordinate is going to be -1 because they're right in line with all these points right here. So their y coordinate's -1. And I just need to know how far I am counting. I need to know the distance from the center to the focus. And you'll recall that we do a little Pythagorean stuff. 36 minus 1, so that's 35. So that distance is the square root of 35. So you're going to start right here at 3, and you're going to add, if you're going right, you're going to add root 35. So this point is 3 plus root 35. I can't really figure out what that is. I just have to leave it that way. 3 plus root 35. And this one back here is 3 minus root 35. Because you're starting at 3, and you're adding root 35 and subtracting root 35. So, the black point is your center. The purple points are your vertices. The blue points are your foci. And the red identifies the length of the major axis is 12, and the length of the minor axis is 2. And that is it.